For centuries, Queen Nefertiti has been remembered as a symbol of perfection, a face so iconic it survived empires, wars, and the collapse of ancient Egypt itself. Yet behind that beauty lies a far more chilling story, because what most people don't realize is that Nefertiti didn't simply die, she disappeared completely. And the way her trail goes cold doesn't look natural, it looks deliberate. Around the 12th year of Akhenaten's 17-year reign, Nefertiti is suddenly wiped from the official record. Her titles vanish, her name stops appearing on monuments, and the woman who once stood beside the pharaoh in every ceremony is erased as if she never existed at all. No burial inscription, no royal tomb, not even a hint of what ended her life. At first, scholars tried to explain it away. Some blamed disease, others suggested illness sweeping through the royal palace, but a smaller group whispered a different theory, that someone wanted her gone, not just from power, but from history itself. And for years, nobody had evidence strong enough to prove anything. That changed when modern science stepped in. New generation sequencing, high-resolution scans, and recently re-examined mummies have begun exposing details hidden for 3,000 years. Details that don't fit a peaceful death. Details that suggest Nefertiti didn't fade into obscurity. She might have been forced into it. And the first clue didn't come from inscriptions or royal archives. It came from a forgotten tomb buried deep in the Valley of the Kings, a tomb nobody thought mattered at all. The trail of clues didn't begin with the queen's tomb or a golden sarcophagus. It began with a place archaeologists barely paid attention to, a cramped, half-collapsed chamber discovered in 1817, tomb KB21. Nothing about it looked royal. No inscriptions, no treasures, just two damaged female mummies left to decay in the dark. For more than a century, KB21 sat in the background of Egyptian archaeology like a footnote no one bothered to read. One of the bodies, later labeled KB21B, was especially overlooked. Her head was missing, her wrappings had disintegrated, and her bones were so fragile they crumbled when touched. She was tagged, documented, and essentially forgotten. Everybody assumed she was nobody. But KB21B had one thing no one realized at the time. Secrets locked so deep inside her bones that it would take modern science over 200 years to reach them. For decades, every attempt to extract DNA from her remains failed. The tissue was too degraded, the environment too harsh, the sample too contaminated. Researchers eventually gave up, convinced the body was a genetic dead end. Then, in 2022, everything changed. With new generation sequencing, scientists finally recovered enough genetic material to build a full mitochondrial profile. When the results came in, the research team didn't believe them at first. KB21B shared the exact maternal lineage as Tutankhamun. Not a similar match, not a partial match, but the same rare haplogroup passed through the women of the royal family. This didn't just put her near the throne, it put her in it. KB21B could only be one of three things: Tutankhamun's aunt, his sister, or his mother. And when you eliminate the known candidates, one name rises above every possibility: Nefertiti. But even that wasn't the truly disturbing part, because as researchers celebrated the genetic breakthrough,
when researchers finally ran high-resolution CT scans on KB21B, they expected confirmation of what everyone assumed for decades, that she was just another damaged mummy worn down by time. Instead, the first few images revealed something so unexpected that one of the technicians reportedly stopped the scan and asked if the data was corrupted. It wasn't. What the machine revealed didn't look ancient at all. It looked like violence, frozen in place. Her upper arms were bent behind her in a position that made no anatomical sense. Embalmers never arranged bodies like that, and natural decay wouldn't twist limbs so sharply. It looked as if her arms were forced backward, trapped in a posture of restraint rather than rest. Then the scan moved to her torso, and the room fell silent. Several ribs were snapped inward, not outward, the way crushing sediment usually behaves. The fracture patterns pointed to a single event, a heavy, sudden impact to the chest. Something or someone struck her hard enough to collapse bone instantly. But the worst damage appeared when the CT passed over her skull. Half of it was caved in. The fracture wasn't jagged like erosion. It was clean, sharp, and catastrophic. Exactly the kind of break that comes from a direct blow with a blunt object. A forensic pathologist on the team noted that the injury was incompatible with survival, meaning she died the moment it happened. And the timing of the trauma made everything far more disturbing. These weren't injuries inflicted by looters centuries later. They occurred right when she died. They were part of her final moments. The evidence pointed to one conclusion: this woman didn't die quietly. She was attacked. Even worse, whoever did it left no sign of ritual preparation afterward, a violation of everything the Egyptians believed about the afterlife. Her body was handled like an inconvenience, not royalty. No protective amulets, no gold, no royal linen, just a rushed wrapping and a burial unworthy of anyone connected to the throne. If KB21B truly belonged to Egypt's most powerful queen, that her death wasn't just violent, it was political. Someone wanted her silenced so thoroughly that even her burial was stripped of honor. But if this battered body in KB21 was truly Nefertiti, then another question becomes impossible to to ignore. Why was her real burial chamber hidden, and where was it placed? Some archaeologists believe the answer lies only a few feet behind the most iconic burial chamber in history. While scientists were decoding DNA and piecing together shattered bones, another team of researchers was staring at painted plaster, convinced the biggest clue to Nefertiti's fate wasn't buried in a forgotten tomb at all. It was hiding inside the most famous burial chamber on Earth, one millions of people have seen, yet almost no one has truly looked at. In 2015, Egyptologist Dr. Nicholas Reeves examined ultra-high-resolution scans of Tutankhamun's tomb, and what he saw made the archaeological world freeze. Tiny distortions in the wall, faint lines, subtle shifts in texture, almost invisible seams beneath the paint didn't match the architecture of the room. They looked too deliberate, too clean. To Reeves, they weren't flaws, they were doorways. He proposed something many experts thought was unthinkable. Tutankhamun's tomb was never meant for Tutankhamun at all. It was too small, too rushed, too inconsistent with the grandeur expected for a pharaoh. He argued that the entire chamber was a last-minute repurposing, a teenage king buried in someone else's corridor because Egypt was scrambling through political chaos, and the someone else he had in mind was Nefertiti. According to Reeves, the north wall of the tomb, the one covered in bright funerary scenes, could be a false wall, plastered over to hide an older chamber behind it, a chamber large enough, decorated enough, and important enough for a woman who may have ruled Egypt as both queen and pharaoh. Almost immediately, the theory went global. Within months, a Japanese team performed ground-penetrating radar scans. Their data appeared to show voids behind both the north and west walls, rectangular spaces that shouldn't exist in a completed tomb. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities cautiously acknowledged that the anomalies were real. For a moment, it felt like the world was standing at the edge of a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Imagine it, the lost burial chamber of Nefertiti, sitting just a few feet behind Tutankhamun's golden mask, untouched for over 3,000 years. But archaeology isn't simple, and neither is politics. In 2018, an Italian team arrived with even more sensitive radar equipment. Their scans contradicted the earlier results, suggesting the anomalies might be nothing more than natural variations in the limestone. Overnight, the excitement collapsed into confusion. Some accused the new results of being misinterpreted. Others hinted, quietly, that shutting down the theory avoided controversy the Egyptian government didn't want. But the debate never died. Too many details refused to line up. The size of Tut's tomb, the unusual construction, the rushed paintwork, the mismatched architectural styles. It's as if the room was carved into an existing structure, one that may have belonged to someone far more significant. And the Egyptians of that era were masters of misdirection. They built false corridors, decoy chambers, and hidden doors designed to confuse tomb raiders. Some researchers now believe they also intended to confuse history. So the question hangs in the air like dust in torchlight.
Long before radar scans and DNA results turned the world upside down, Egyptologists were already whispering about a mystery hidden in plain sight: the sudden appearance of a pharaoh who ruled in the shadows between Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, a ruler known only by a name that flickers through the records like a ghost: Smenkhare. For decades, no one knew who Smenkhare was. A brother, a prince, a political puppet. Then scholars began noticing something strange. The surviving fragments that mentioned this pharaoh didn't look masculine at all. Certain carvings showed a figure with delicate features, wearing the double crown, but possessing proportions far closer to a queen. Even more bizarre, some inscriptions originally carved with female titles had been clumsily altered, as if someone scrubbed out the truth and replaced it with something more politically acceptable. And that's when a new theory emerged, one that shook the entire Amarna timeline. What if Smenkhare wasn't a man? What if Nefertiti reinvented herself as a male king? It wasn't unprecedented. Egyptian history is filled with powerful women who slipped into the role of pharaoh when the throne was unstable. But Nefertiti's situation was different. By the end of Akhenaten's reign, she wasn't just a royal wife. She had ceremonial authority, religious influence, and the loyalty of a city built around the faith she helped shape. In the final years of Amarna, inscriptions begin referring to her with masculine epithets, language normally reserved for kings. She appears wearing crowns associated only with pharaohs. And some artifacts found in Tutankhamun's tomb tell an even stranger story. Gold fittings, ceremonial items, and even parts of Tut's famous burial equipment show signs of being repurposed. Feminine pronouns scratched out, names altered, titles rewritten. The craftsmanship is exquisite, but the edits are rushed, sloppy, almost panicked, as if the royal artisans were trying to erase someone quickly before the truth spread too far. Who would warrant that level of frantic erasure? A queen who dared to claim the throne as a king. If Nefertiti ruled as Smenkhare for even a short time, it would explain everything. The sudden disappearance of her name, the chaotic transition to Tutankhamun, the political tension surrounding the Amarna dynasty, and the relentless efforts to rewrite its legacy. But it also raises a darker question. If she ascended to ultimate power, who decided she shouldn't keep it? Because the reign of Smenkhare ends abruptly. No tomb, no mummy, no confirmed burial goods. Just a name scratched half-heartedly across a handful of artifacts and then wiped again by those who came after. And if Nefertiti became that ruler, then her fall wasn't natural. It was intentional. Someone erased her reign. Someone erased her identity. And if the body in KV-21b is hers, someone erased her. But the Amarna dynasty didn't collapse with Nefertiti. There was someone else who carried a piece of the truth, a woman whose identity shook Egyptology to its core when scientists finally uncovered it. And she was hiding in a completely different tomb. Just when scholars thought the Amarna puzzle couldn't get any stranger, another figure emerged from the shadows. The so-called younger lady discovered in tomb KV-35. At first, she seemed unremarkable, poorly preserved, unlabeled, and stripped of the honors usually reserved for royalty. She was dismissed as a secondary figure, minor queen or forgotten princess. But the 2010 DNA study flipped that assumption entirely. The younger lady wasn't just connected to the royal line, she was central to it. Genetically, she was the mother of Tutankhamun and a full sister of Akhenaten, leaving Nefertiti as the only prominent woman unaccounted for. Suddenly, the younger lady was thrust into the heart of one of history's greatest mysteries, and her remains told a story far more violent than anyone could have imagined. Her face shattered, her jaw broken, cheekbones destroyed. Not a single injury suggested decay over centuries. Experts, including Zahi Hawass, concluded this was targeted, deliberate trauma, the kind of injury seen in palace conspiracies or assassinations. She hadn't just died, she had been silenced. And here's the chilling part. Her wounds closely mirrored those observed on KV-21b. Broken ribs, twisted arms, shattered skull, the same pattern of calculated violence. The younger lady in KV-21b may have shared not just family ties, but a terrifying fate. If KV-21b was Nefertiti, then the younger lady's death reveals a horrifying pattern. Royal women with power were being systematically removed, their bodies hidden, their names erased, their influence wiped from history. Even more unsettling, her presence as Tutankhamun's mother raises questions about lineage, inheritance, and political manipulation, suggesting the violence wasn't random, but part of a cold, calculated purge. And the genetic story doesn't end there. Studies reveal the disturbing pattern across the Amarna line. Rare recessive disorders, skeletal fragility, and compromised immunity, suggesting generations of inbreeding compounded by exposure to toxic substances. Certain genes made these individuals physically vulnerable, easily injured, slow to heal, and susceptible to trauma, which means the attacks on these royal women were not only political, but opportunistic. Their genetics made them targets, their bodies fragile instruments in a deadly game of power and survival. It's almost impossible to overstate the implications. A dynasty undone not just by politics, but by biology, betrayal, and violence, all encoded in DNA and etched into broken bones. And while historians debate the younger lady's exact identity, one possibility looms larger than any other. She could have been a final witness to Nefertiti.
For over a century, the world has stared at the bust of Nefertiti and marveled at its beauty. Poised, symmetrical, and almost impossibly perfect, it has become the defining image of ancient Egyptian elegance. But modern science has revealed a secret that turns admiration into unease. The bust may not show the real Nefertiti at all. In 2009, researchers at Germany's Imaging Science Institute used high-resolution CT scans to peer beneath the paint. What they discovered was shocking. Underneath the polished surface, the limestone core held a different face, one with a broader nose, deeper cheek lines, and subtle asymmetries erased in plaster. The outer face wasn't just artistic enhancement, it was propaganda. In an era of political upheaval, with Akhenaten's radical sun worship reforms stirring fear and unrest, Nefertiti needed to be seen not as a mortal queen with flaws, but as a divine, untouchable figure. Her image had to inspire loyalty, mask chaos, and conceal the dangerous reality beneath her power. Even more disturbing, the bust was never inscribed with her name. Unlike other royal sculptures, it carried no identifying markers, no titles, no clear claim to royalty. It may have been designed as a decoy, a silent witness meant to distract the world from the queen's real story, her disappearance, her possible reign as Smenkhare, and the violent fate that may have awaited her. Some scholars suggest the bust wasn't meant for public display at all. Found in the sculptor's workshop, it may have been an internal model, a prototype used to plan other statues and reliefs. Its perfection was less about art and more about control. Control of perception, control of history, control of a queen's legacy after she had vanished from the record. And yet, despite centuries of erasure, this plastered, painted face survived. It endured when her tomb may have been destroyed, when her children were quietly removed from history, and when her body may have been violently silenced. The bust became her last voice, speaking across millennia. But there's a haunting possibility. The face we worship today may be a mask hiding a crime. Every brushstroke and layer of plaster could be a deliberate act to rewrite history, to make the queen who disappeared look untouchable, serene, and untarnished, while the reality of her death, her struggles, and her erasure remained buried. The most beautiful face in history may have been designed not to honor a queen, but to hide a murder, a political purge, and a dynasty's secret shame. And as science continues to decode scattered bones, DNA, and even layers of plaster, the question grows darker. If the bust hides the truth, what else of Nefertiti's story has been carefully buried by time, politics, and ambition? For over 3,000 years, Queen Nefertiti has captivated the world. Her image, immortalized in limestone and paint, has been worshipped as the pinnacle of beauty. Yet her life, her death, and her true legacy remain shrouded in shadows. DNA, CT scans, and archaeological whispers suggest a story far darker than any sculpture could convey. A tale of political reinvention, violence, and deliberate erasure. From the mysterious KV-21b mummy and the younger lady's shattered remains to the hidden chambers possibly lurking behind Tutankhamun's tomb walls, every clue points to one haunting possibility. Nefertiti did not simply vanish. She was silenced, her identity hidden, and her reign rewritten. She may have ruled as Smenkhare, navigating a treacherous throne only to be betrayed by those closest to her. Even her celebrated bust, the image the world has admired for a century, may have been a mask not of eternal beauty, but of concealment. Beneath its perfect surface lies a queen altered, idealized, and ultimately used as a distraction from the violent reality of her life. And her story did not end with her. Her daughters, heirs to the Amarna dynasty, were quietly erased from history, their bloodline obscured, their lives barely remembered. The DNA of the family tells a chilling story, a dynasty weakened by genetics, poisoned by ambition, and haunted by mortality. Yet despite centuries of erasure and silence, fragments of Nefertiti's truth endure. In broken bones, ancient walls, and the hidden layers of a sculpted face, history whispers her story, a story of power, beauty, rebellion, and betrayal that refuses to be completely silenced. Nefertiti may have been erased from the official record, but she cannot be forgotten. Her legacy survives in the questions she leaves behind. Who truly ruled Egypt in the shadows of her time? What secrets remain hidden behind tomb walls and painted plaster? And how much of history, even now, has been shaped not by truth, but by those who controlled the narrative? For over 3,000 years, Queen Nefertiti has captivated the world. Her image, immortalized in limestone and paint, has been worshipped as the pinnacle of beauty. Yet her life, her death,